Peter and very little.
May 29th, 2025, our very first tiny home meeting. Yay!
Okay. I'll start. I'm Pete.
Hi. I'm Marula.
And Pamela.
And
Rama.
Corey.
And Linda.
And I'm Walt.
And Walt. Yay. So, I thought Teresa's idea, which I just love, is, we're thinking about a spiritual community that has a focus of just, working in harmony with one another, whatever pathway you choose, whether it's a nature path or a deity path or a woodworking path or whatever it might be, but just that we're working on that. So her idea was to, which I love, was maybe just take a moment to go in for a minute and reflect of like what you're hoping to bring to the table. And then setting that intent. Does that sound good? If anybody else has any other ideas, I'm sure open to that, but that was just one that Teresa came up with. I thought was sweet.
And you also kind of laid out some questions.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're going to plan to sort of go through those one by one.
I hope to, but I just threw that out as a starting point so that people can kind of take that. But I thought maybe first let's take a moment to just kind of center in ourselves and our busy days sometimes and everything that our mind races and all the things we're bringing in. But just take a moment to center in what you're bringing to the table tonight, and what are you hoping to walk away with just for you, to hold that intent. Just give us a minute or so.
We got quarters.
Yay, good. Perfect timing.
Hola, hola, amigo.
So, thank you everybody for coming. I just want to say how it warms my heart to have a group of people that are just, dreaming and visioning. We've been talking about this for years and years. So it's really nice to, with everyone's just to start eating up and figuring out what might be possible and what might not be possible. Who wants what, who doesn't want what, that kind of thing. Susan is with us in spirit tonight because she couldn't come. But so we've been doing a lot of reading. We've met with some county officials or some city lake officials, and have lots of stuff maybe to talk about in that regard. But I'm not sure that's tonight. It might just be that tonight's to really brainstorm and see what people are interested in. That was kind of my hope for tonight's meeting. And then if you have any hopes or things that you're looking for tonight, for us to get there. So does anybody have one of the questions I provided or your own that you'd like to start with?
So were you interested in it being a tiny home kind of situation, or off-the-grid, solar, outhousing, or plumbing?
That's all on the table. That's, originally I think I put tiny home because that's where, what I've been talking about with folks for a decade or more, but it doesn't have to be that. So that's a good question. So other folks, what do you think about that? Tiny home, off-grid, on-grid?
I went and spoke to the county planning commission and asked them about it, and they said that there's a new designation called tiny home villages.
Yes.
In zoned areas that are zoned multifamily, but it's they're kind of accepting that this is a new paradigm in housing. So, okay, we all have kind of a picture of what a tiny home village might look like, but there's a lot of questions we have to get through before we ever were even to think about moving forward. But one question I would have right off the bat, and it's a very big general question, is talk about a spiritual community, and I'd like to know more about what that is in general terms, anyway.
Okay, can we come back to that, Walt? Would
Sure.
you mind, so that we can? I want to maybe just stick with Corey's original idea of the tiny home. Just like maybe have everyone give a little input, and then let's segue to that next. Does that sound good? Yeah.
I guess my question would be, for those of you who've gone inside of tiny homes, do you feel like that would work for you? Because that's the question I'm asking myself. I haven't answered it yet completely. But have you experienced walking into one? I'm sure there are smaller ones and bigger ones.
The designation for a tiny home, if it goes on the road, it can't be bigger than 8 feet wide by 26 feet long.
100 square feet is the maximum.
Right, and that 8 feet, it can be tall, taller, but that's the footprint it has on the trailer, 8 by 26. So, and then of course, expand your thinking. If it's going to be sitting on a foundation, then it's your own idea of what might be called tiny. Originally, I think the 8 by 26 was what they really considered to be a tiny home, and that is tiny. What is that? 8 times 26?
That's not 400 square feet.
No, it's not. 400 must be another designation as well.
So, and in the ordinance it says 400 square feet.
There we go.
So,
and it does
so
say
I
that
don't think
tiny
it
home
has.
on wheels can be 400 square feet.
Yeah.
It does say that.
Yeah,
And
so I think
that's
that-
the new ordinance that just got pushed
Yeah,
through in
that's I
2020.
attached
400 square
that to you.
400 square feet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the new ordinance. That was my understanding from
Right.
talking to people and looking at the ordinance.
Could
Yeah,
it be because
but-
of floors? Or
What's that?
could it be because of the floors? Or
The 400 square foot
Maybe lofts.
designation.
Also,
lofts
it's the
would-
loft, so a second story would
Yeah.
add to, and a lot of them have second stories. I'm obsessed with them.
I've watched a lot of
obsessed.
videos and I've been inside a few, and I think it, like a mobile home, which I've been living in now for years, it absolutely depends on the layout. It's very helpful if people try to personalize it. But there's also combinations of it. For example, I have friends who are a couple, and they have two tiny homes that are joined together with kind of a walkway. And it's Nemaya, exactly. Nemaya and Jacqueline, if you know them. And so they have their sleeping area in one area, and so it's not like one belongs to each of them, though you could do it that way too, if you were people who needed to do that. And it also seems to me, the only way I could imagine living in a tiny home is if there are communal areas, communal tiny homes which encompass a library, a communal kitchen, and a gathering area, an art studio, maybe a wood shop, that kind of thing, and like a yoga, meditation area,
sounds nice.
so that your personal space could be minimal and you'd be where you'd sleep, but you might want to hang out for privacy, and you might have a kitchenette rather than a huge kitchen. I mean, I would, but that's the only way I can really consider it.
So is the idea of having tiny homes to keep the cost down for everybody, as opposed to permanent structures, or what was the ultimate idea, so that we could move? Like, it'd be cool to be nomadic.
Well, there's legislation for tiny homes. They call them THOW. So tiny homes that are able to be moved around in the village versus stationary tiny homes in the village. And
On wheels.
on wheels. And then, also just a tiny home on foundation, on a permanent foundation. So my thought originally when I was just playing around with this idea, and I'd be interested to hear what you say, is that, like, if we have communal areas that have these things that Linda mentioned, and also if you think of terms of youth through elders, we need some playrooms or some, you need guest quarters, you need a laundry room,
Right.
library, a movie, whatever. But that can all go in a main building, and then in your home, you have 400 square foot of space, or slightly less than that, but definitely not more if it's still a tiny home designation. And that's your space to have your privacy, and you can also, like, I'm living in a tiny home right now with Pete. It's about 260 square feet, so it's
Quite
pretty
tiny.
small.
tiny.
Pretty
And
small.
we're liking it, but it's
Yeah.
but it wouldn't be for the long term.
Yeah, and so it was really interesting for me living in this, because I realized, one, the idea of living in a tiny home is everybody doesn't need their own lawnmower. Everybody doesn't need their own, pots and pans and silverware. You can have that if you want in your quarters, but basically we're sharing a lot of that, and we're saving on cost as well as saving on consumerism. We're cutting down our footprint, and we're working communally to do that together. And then the other part of it for me was that I work from home, and so being in a tiny home with someone coming and going and lots of stuff happening makes it really hard for me to be able to work from home, teaching online and or working on writing. So it could also be possible that these tiny homes, there's another designation, I'm forgetting the word, where it's like detached something, and it's basically like a bedroom and living room, and that's what you have, and maybe a composting toilet in your thing, and then the living area has everything else. Now in that, you can also add like a little fridge. We have a sink, and you would have a sink in there, of course, but you could also add like a little hot plate, and so that you can still cook and do whatever you want in yours. But that opens up the designation a little bit more, so that it's not in the same segue as tiny home.
Though if I understood the regulations about it, they don't really allow all those extra things that you say.
Yeah, they do. That's the
They
new
do?
2024 designation.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
they're
Dependent unit.
Yes, dependent unit. You can have that, but you don't have to have it.
Is that a California ordinance or federal?
It's a Humboldt County.
Humboldt County.
Humboldt County.
My
Yeah.
neighbor wrote it. I used to live next to the apartment that the neighbor
So
Megan
you're
wrote it.
you're
That's great.
Yeah,
What's that called? Detached?
It's called a dependent unit.
Dependent.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think those were they were initially visualizing like a homeless encampment where they had a central bathroom and they had a central
Yeah.
kitchen and
Yeah.
all of that.
And as far as I
And-
understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but Humboldt County has, you have to have enough sewer and or septic for everyone in the facility. Once you have that, they can handle that load, you are allowed to have composting toilets in your, as well. You just
Oh,
have to have enough of the septic and or sewer that it would cover everyone, even though you don't have to use it. That's the law. That's what I'm understanding. So,
Yeah.
and that was a new designation as well. That,
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if that stayed in Humboldt County, but you have to have enough of the regular sewage sanitation system to be able to do that. You can't just have composting toilets. So if you wanted to have, a composting toilet in your unit, you could. Or if you had a tiny home, it could come, shower, toilet, everything. Or it could look like, maybe you have clusters of 4 or 5 tiny homes together in a tiny little circle, and maybe you have five of those throughout the property. So you have 20 or 25 units. And maybe you have 4 of those that are like the little living room, bedroom things, and then a tiny home there that has everything you need right there. So it's basically like walking out your door 20 feet, and there's your toilet, there's your shower. So it can look a lot of different ways. Tiny home designation, but my main goal was to cut down on some things to share, and to also just build that community space where we're helping and working together. So that was my thought, but it doesn't have to be a tiny home. That was just what I brought to the table of my vision. So, want to add anything to that?
Sure. Well, I have been obsessed with the tiny homes for quite a while now, and I've lived in a couple different communities, including living with Pagan Albo for 3 years. And I really like the idea of having things. I lived in less than I lived in 300 square feet of their house for 3 years. I'm in 400 square feet now, and it feels like a good amount, especially with the common areas. And I think the tiny home village, especially with the ordinance in Humboldt, it might be easier to get through than trying to do like multiple dwellings, like multiple permitted dwellings on the property. I mean, I think that would be harder to get through, from my understanding of it.
And expense too.
And expense, yeah. And I do. I'm single, and I would like to keep my expenses down. That is a factor for me. So a tiny home would work out that way. And I like the idea of just using less space and using less things. Like the smaller house you have, the less stuff you buy. Because everything now, like in 400 square feet, everything is a decision before it comes into my house, like candle or anything. So I like that. One of the things that's important to me is lowering the footprint. Like one of the communities I've studied, Dancing Rabbit, they do a car share. And so for 60 people, they only have 4 cars. I really like that idea of just like thinking about like, what can we let go of that we're so attached to right now?
Yeah.
And also growing food is really important to me, so I would want to have that garden part of it.
Hey, Terrence. Hi, Terrence.
But yeah, the tiny home village, especially with the ordinance, seems like something that would be easier to get through than a lot of other things. But my main reason is I'm obsessed with tiny homes. And I think some of them have been so well crafted now, and so almost built like a boat where every square inch is utilized for storage and is purposeful and intentional and food. So that's we're just going around talking tiny home village. That was a topic of does it need to be a tiny home village? Why are we thinking tiny home village? What are our thoughts on tiny home villages? And I was just sharing that my old neighbor, Megan, wrote the tiny home ordinance for Humboldt County, so we were just talking some of those details.
No.
Yeah. Remind me of your name again. Corey. Right. And Rama. Right.
And do you know Walt?
Yeah.
Do you know Walt?
Hi, I'm Walt.
Hi, Walt. Therese. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I was going to say in this book too, it's set in, it's such a great book, it's set in Denmark, which were the first people that really developed the laws and legislation for permitting for tiny homes, and became kind of the models for a lot of other places around the world how to do their permits and legislation. But they were talking about some places that they have like 55 people in their tiny home community, and they have 2 washers and dryers, and it works. They just, they put stuff in their bin if, like, you're come in and there's stuff ahead of you and the washer and dryer is, like, done, then, people leave a note, like, put this in the dryer, but leave the sweater out and whatever, and they put the next one in and they make it work. So it was fascinating, like, to think of, and one thing everyone said is some of them weren't tiny homes at all communities, they just weren't intentional communities, but they had larger homes. And one thing they all said after the fact is we wish we would have built tinier individual homes and made the common house bigger. So they all had that in common, and that was 8 different places that were interviewed in this book. So it was kind of interesting, like just hearing what different people have to say about that. But that's one idea of something that it could look like. But again, that's kind of like what we're just throwing out on the table is what would we want? What would we want? And then another question is, would people want to have prefab things, or do you want to build your own, or what kind of materials would you want to use, or there's all those questions. But first is, would we want tiny homes? So anybody else want to tag into that discussion a little bit?
It seems there's a lot dependent on the land. And is there anything for you sharing with us, or is that still not in a place of sharing?
Is anything?
We've maybe, well, you discovered in your meeting.
Certainly the land is immense. It's a huge part of the whole project. In fact, it will dictate how everything fits together. But I have a question back to the ordinance. The tiny home village ordinance, common building. It does.
Oh, yes,
Good.
Yeah, and the way it's written now, is it detached? Is that what you said, Grandma? Detached?
Oh, detached.
Detached.
Wait, detached unit.
Detached. Yeah, especially the wording right now, and on this a little more, but the detached unit delineation. Oh, thank you. Says that in particular, like that for every 8 units, you have to have a kitchen bathroom. So,
What they call the detached unit or a dependent unit?
dependent.
Should we order food if we're ordering?
Yes.
Let's do it, because that'll take some time.
Let's take a moment and do that. I'll turn this off real quick.
Oh, you asked about land.
Oh yeah, land. Okay.
In my experience, just at one point 3 years ago, I went down with a bunch of people and we talked about how we might design a planned community, a tiny house configuration. And there were a lot of great ideas that we'll discuss more as we get into it. But finding the land really dictated a whole lot of what it might look like, because how big is it? How many acres is it? How many flat spaces are on that acreage that would allow for the building? How much would you have to pay for road access and putting in electricity and sewage and water, etc.? Those are great big expenses, and it's all cash up front.
Or are they already there?
Well, that's why we came up with the idea that wouldn't it be great to find a 5-10 acre plot in a sunny part of Humboldt County, but still close in, that had an old farmhouse on it. So it would be the perfect spot, because you'd have all of those services already into the house. You could use that as your common house as you build up around it, and then you could branch off of those services, and the road would already be in as well. So the land, it's an immense thing, and it's just a matter of, in my mind, what you have to do is ask the universe for it. It will bestow upon you if you have good karma. Because it's a huge part of this whole project, and there's a lot of spaces that you'll look at that have some of those features, but not all of them. And that's in the end what you might want to really work with. There's a beautiful plot right on Alliance. It's already designated tiny house ready. Multiple units. You could have something like 50 people living there, and everything was only $750,000, which is a lot of money, but not for 2 acres of prime real estate in Arcata. And I went down and spoke to the city planner, and he said, well, that used to be a wrecking yard, and it was actually a Superfund cleanup spot. So it was contaminated with by old cars, and though they did clean it up, he said he thought they didn't do a good job of it. So that kind of thing, where you find what looks like a very, very good spot, everything's laid out perfectly, and right downtown Arcata, 2 acres, and then boom, something pops up. So finding that perfect plot of land that's just big enough, is really situated where you want it to be, and has all of the buildable spots and it's immense. It's an immense part of the project. But we're probably ahead of ourselves on that. Because I guess is define what you're looking for before you start looking for it.
So you said you had a team of people who were trying to do that before?
It was part of, remember Cooperative Humboldt? Cooperation Humboldt. They put together a seminar of sorts in which they brought people together to discuss cooperative housing. And from that, I met 10 people or so. We started discussing whether this was a possibility and what it would look like to do this. We had several people that were kind of a core group that were mostly interested. What we came up with was a couple of good ideas. It would be great to have a business plan and declare yourself an LLC.
Or a nonprofit.
Or a nonprofit, yes. Whatever the designation is. And when it came to financing, that was the biggest hurdle to get over right off the once you go through the brainstorming phase, pulling the trigger and going into your savings and putting out money for this that's it, where you make that leap of faith. And the one idea I came up with is it might be worth looking at foundations and philanthropists and writing grants as a possibility. So yes, a business plan was a good idea, and that kind of vision in our head of this perfect little piece of land that had an existing structure on it that wasn't just somebody's dream house. An old farmhouse is what I pictured. Would be absolutely perfect for this. So, and it would be located in Blue Lake. So,
Has anybody been talking to you? Because we have such a property.
do you?
Yeah, it meets a lot of that. Actually,
Is that the one you sent the?
The 5 acres with the farmhouse.
Is that, can that be designated as multiple family or small tiny home?
We just went to meet, it have to be rezoned, and so there's a big process for that. So what we're talking about is, and I can send people videos if you're interested, but we just went to look at it because it just popped on the market and we're ever keeping our eye open. It's 5 acres. It's just past the levee, or just before the levee is if you're driving out to the hatchery, it's on Fish Hatchery or Hatchery Road. And flat, surrounded by city land, so it's all being grazed by cows, and eucalyptus trees, lots of apple trees in the property, a farmhouse, 2 structures. Toilets are already hooked up to the septic system, working toilets, working showers. It's already hooked up to city water. It's already hooked up to city power. At some point you might want to make it solar, but it's hooked up. 800,000. He said off the bat he'd come down to 750, and without it, I could do something just like that. So, which is like great. Could you do 650? Would be my next thing, you know. But when we went to City Hall the next day, we had scheduled this meeting with City Hall a couple weeks back. And this property just came on the market Saturday, so it was very synchronistic that like we were going to check out a different property. And we went there and they said, you know, first of all, it's not in the annual flood zone. There's like a 1% annual flood zone area because that used to be the lake in Blue Lake.
Oh.
It used to be the lake.
How long ago?
A long time ago. However, if you go out there during the winter, the spring, you will see the fields around it flood. Now, according to the flood charts, right up to the property line is considered a 1% chance of flood annually, right? And that flood means like big ponds, right? In somewhere in the vicinity. But those lines on a map, like nature doesn't, you know, really follow lines on a map. So it might go past that. It might go the whole way up. The trees are in the way. It blocks it from the road, and it's behind a gate, so you can't really see in the wintertime, is there a pond on their property or not? And the owner says it's fine. Of course they do. You know, so like maybe he's telling the absolute truth, or maybe there's some,
fine.
yeah, maybe some like, going on there. So the first thing I did is, okay, so what if you bought the property knowing you might have some issues with flooding? What do we need to do? So you can put it up on posts. You can do fill-ins where you build up to 3 feet of soil, and then you have another foot beyond that and a foundation past that. So, and then if that was the community house, then everyone's home's on tiny wheels, and you roll it into an area, movable homes where there's not a flood. There was an issue a couple years back with the creek that's on the north side of the property flooded because some culverts got backed up, and there was 3 foot of water in the barn. Right, that's not finished on the bottom, but it's finished, not finished, but it's complete on the top. But the bottom part just has a gravel floor, and it's a skeleton waiting for you. It's waiting for you.
I would put it in a pond so we'd have a low area.
Yeah, some people do that. They build up posts. They would just take out the whole bottom part of the barn, put up posts, and leave it open so that if you have a flood, the water just comes and goes. But anyway, so we checked into that. We checked into the other issue is right now it's on septic. Could it still handle 20? Not long term. The short term, we're not starting with 20 people, but long term, 20 or 30 people. That ends up being the village. Could
do composting.
Could the septic handle that? Well, the requirement is your septic has to be able to handle the load, and you can do composting toilets on top of that if you want, in lieu of it. But on the books, you have to have enough
Interesting.
of the septic system. And then there's this other legality that when you're in 500 feet of the main septic line in a tiny village or anything else of that matter, you're required by law to tap into that. So we had a call in today with Chris in Blue Lake, who works in public works with the water and sewage department. And he's checking because he doesn't think it's within 500 feet. So you wouldn't have to be mandated to connect the pipe. But if you would have to connect the pipe, it might be like 400 feet of pipe. Because if it's in 500 feet and it's not connected now, it might be 400 feet of pipe you have to lay, and that could be super pricey. So there are things to look at that property, things to consider. The owner said that if anyone wants to go out there, he gave us the code to the gate. We're happy to take you out just to, we could have a day where we just go look at it and see what you think.
What is it zoned?
It's zoned agricultural, and we would need to get it to multi-use or opportunity zone is what they were saying. Even multi-family would not work. It's inside the limits of Blue Lake, who does not have a tiny home plan. They do not follow Humboldt County guidelines. Big bummer. And they go by state guidelines. So basically, we would need to, if that property was something that somehow miraculously we could make work, we would need to really advocate hard with the land use attorney to get Blue Lake to honor some of Humboldt County's bylaws in the tiny home movement.
And can you have a sale contingent on something like that? I mean, I don't
You
know
might
how.
be able to.
Yeah.
You might be able to.
And with a say it's 750 or 700, how much of that is how much of that is like cash down immediately?
That's a great question. He said if we could get, looking at 750, if we could get 400 down cash, then 50 is already on a loan, and the loan backer said he would carry it for the next buyer. So we'd need 400 cash.
I think we'll allow for people wanting.
I guess with land attorneys, they said that tiny home villages you can have more than that, but that might be a good guideline. Is just roughly 4 people on the land. And then, another question becomes, and this is for later, but who owns the land?
Yes, that's a big
Who
question.
owns the land? If we go under nonprofit status, does the nonprofit own it? Do you still own it? Do you have your house there and you own your house? You can sell it to anyone you want, or can you only sell it to someone that the whole community feels good about? There are all these questions to navigate later. But this is like
But to contemplate now,
yes,
so
it's
that
like
everybody
to
can
be
prepared.
thinking about it.
I think you have to think about it because people
do
have
have
to
to think about
people have to consider their finances because I know you did some research about the type of sort of prefab home that you like, and what was the cost of that?
The smaller
Remind
ones
me.
were, the small ones that were 200 square feet, or they're 20 grand, and the 300 square feet are 30 grand,
What about?
and the larger ones that are just absolutely stunning, and I think
And
Walt
ha-
is the one that
The
turned me on
gorgeous
to
How-
ones,
those.
how
they're
many
like
is it?
100.
How
No,
They can be like
they're
60s
50.
then.
They're 50.
50.
But
Okay.
they're at 50, and they're I think 350 square feet.
Okay. So that's kind
So
of
all of them would be on
the
platform
largest.
or wheels.
Definitely fun to look at those photos.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're amazing.
Well, yeah.
So fun.
Would you send me
And
the
if
link
you,
for that?
if
I'm
you
hooked.
if you somehow were able to get under nonprofit status, you could apply for a shitload of funding from Humboldt County, from maybe even from Blue Lake, and also then from the state, and also federally.
Yeah, except at this moment,
Right.
it's
It
not
could
the
be
time to
tricky.
get grants. And
It
the
could
state
be,
is
it could be tricky.
the state is in dire financial shape, and
County is
But-
in dire
and the
financial
county is
but
in dire
everyone
financial.
This is in
Uh,
dire
uh,
straits.
But
No,
everyone is
and-
pushing right now for affordable housing.
Yeah,
This could be tapped into that in some way.
Possibly,
Might be able to get
but
quite a
in
bit
this
of funding.
in Trump land, they don't care about affordability
We're
for
in Gavin
normal
Newsom
human
land,
beings.
though. We're in Gavin Newsom. I work for the state, so
Oh yeah,
yeah,
okay.
we are.
Yeah, but
much
he's
better off.
cutting some. We are better off. Of course, I am so grateful to live in California. But he's talking about cutting some major, Medicaid stuff that's really going to hurt people.
So we won't ask
So-
Uncle
so-
Don.
Our rich
Yeah,
uncle.
but
Yeah.
but
Rich,
but
creepy
if
uncle.
there are advantages to the nonprofit, which it sounds like there might be, and you might be able to get some grants and stuff, then it's a question of, do you have enough people who are willing to put down $100,000 as a gift to the existence of this community? And what I wasn't clear from you is what your thoughts are. If somebody's willing to put down $100,000, what is their payback other than they have the satisfaction of knowing that they helped make it possible?
That would be a question for everyone. But tonight, I want to say, I know that's a concern, and it's huge, and it's great that we're kind of planting that seed, but I'm not sure it's the cart before the horse. I'm not sure that's a conversation, and if you feel it is, chime in, but I feel like that's something we can go into, like maybe at our next meeting, but tonight is just kind of like, what would you like to have?
Okay.
And what would you not, like, definitely no, I'm out if it's this.
Okay.
Like, that's what I'd really like to hear from folks tonight, just to see, like, are we on the same page? Are we kind of feeling it, like, in unity? And then from there, I think we can start exploring land. We can explore funding. Do we want to be a nonprofit or not?
But from being in that group and from talking with you for years, finding a piece of land is so difficult and rare that if this place has even possibilities about it, such high possibilities of location, of size, of having the septic and everything, then there are other people looking for pieces of land like this too. So to me, this has kind of got an urgency about it to
I hear
look
you,
at
and
some of the
Pete
questions.
and I were ready to be like, here's 400, and
Right.
We'll do the loan for the 350. Can
Yeah.
we just sign our name today?
Right.
Yeah.
We were,
Get out your ball and say
we
that.
were just ready,
Yeah.
And but then we went to the city, and even putting, like, right now with agricultural zoning, you're entitled to a farmhouse, any house that you want, and an ADU, and that farmhouse can have also an ADU that's attached and an ADU bedroom, private entrance. So you could have like 4 units legally on that with the zoning. However, you still have the issues that we have to find out, and we still have to do plus it would still have to, no, it wouldn't have to go through permitting because it's that. So, but we felt like the reason we made an appointment, or that we went in yesterday and talked to city planning, was we didn't really want to get involved like up to our elbows, if there wasn't any possibility to do a tiny home. So, yeah, you're right. It does seem a little urgent. I also feel like
Thank you.
this is
Right here.
I kind of feel like too this is a
Thank
time for us to wet our spiritual whiskers, so to speak, with the community, because it's like we can come from a place of fear and acting out, and then it gets. And I was feeling that. The other day I was thinking about it, and then I realized
Like a larger kind of.
So then that gets back to my question about what is,
I gave it to you.
of course, I did go down this road and I had some ideas of what, one of the
Say,
big,
bless all we receive and back to you have a great dinner.
Yeah, it's fine that we get to eat together.
thank you for
It's
joining
good
us.
to be at this little juncture.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
that's good for
Bon
everybody.
provecho.
If this person has on the one hand it's a special property, on the other hand it has problems.
Yeah.
So is he at all, what kind of explorations can you make about the zoning and this and that and the expense? What would the expense be involved?
We're already in that process. We're exploring that right now. Like we went in, we had a first meeting with the city planners of Blue Lake yesterday. We have another meeting set up for, no, I think it's the end of June. We have another meeting, but we do have a meeting set up next week with the building department in Blue Lake. So it's still a lot of questions at this point. I wish I could say, oh my gosh, this is everything we've been waiting for. But I feel like I said, like, if this is a matter of a spiritual faith, it is for me. It's like I put it out there, and I have to believe that it's going to be the right place at the right time. And so if this place would go like that, we don't have enough time to check into anything and we lose it, for me, it's like a sign that wasn't the right place at the right time. Maybe someone else puts it back on the market. Or maybe it doesn't sell for a while, and then he gets more willing to drop
Lower the price, right?
Because when I called public sewer today, they were like, what? You can build on that? Gosh, a couple people called. I told them they can't build on it. I'm like, can you keep telling them that? And he's like, no, I can't do that now that I know. I'm like,
Now that I get my information
And you're like,
from
well,
the right
actually, I was
source.
just joking.
yeah, I don't know that either. You better check with them, because I could have it wrong.
They snab one of Teresa's forks.
So that I would like to advocate coming from a place of flow and peace rather than fear, and we have to do this right now or we're gonna lose it. Although I understand that we might need to act fast if something does come up. I do understand that as well, but I just want to put that. But yeah, go ahead.
I have a thought on the ag land. One of the communities I'm familiar with in Santa Barbara is called Sunburst. They have a long, interesting history, but they've been together for decades, and they own some ag land outside of Santa Barbara in Lompoc City area. No, it's actually out in the country. And they were able to build additional housing because they're all employees of this corporation, and they do own. They own like ag businesses and different things. So I wonder if there was like some sort of business structure,
That's a
and it
good
was
question.
an ag business of some sort. I don't know what. It sounds like ag land. They graze cattle on theirs, and they grow food. They own a grocery store actually.
Yeah, and Genevieve has sheep, and she gets a huge tax cut every year for, just the sheep that graze her land.
And we have pygmy goats. I just
Right.
love those little pygmy goats. Cute
Maybe,
little things. I think you can milk them.
Yeah, so that's great. So we did ask before about this land, about that, but we didn't hit that angle. But he said that technically on agricultural land you are entitled to have like workers' housing, but he said you would have to have a strong agricultural component. So there is that. You know, like if you tried to get the permitting, let's say it didn't go through, you could like switch your head around. Okay, let's do an farmers.
Time
Yeah,
to make goat
let's be
cheese.
farmers.
Goat cheese,
Make
oh
goat
yeah.
cheese.
Goat cheese, yes.
Or you lease the land out to a farmer.
Yeah. Yeah, right now it's grazed by 3 cows. They're really, really sweet and they like apples. They might try to headbutt you if you don't give them an apple.
So is there a home on it, or is just the
There
barn?
is a barn.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a farmhouse, never
No,
was a farmhouse.
no. There's never been and I think because there has been issues with some flooding of the fields and stuff in the past, no one, even the county was like, what? People are going to build there? They can build there? So there's that question again, would that be the right place for us, or could we make it the right place? Could we get enough soil or enough piers or whatever? With Walt's knowledge and people's playfulness, could we figure that out together? Or could we consult with engineers and, you know, find a way around that? Anyone that's looking at that land is going to have to be asking this question, unless they're just intending to graze cows there or goats. Whatever. Yeah, even for farmland.
Did you ask how this man came to have this land? Is it family?
It was
Or
a
is it-
family that owned it. Want to tell a story?
Well, as I remember, he grew up in Blue Lake, and so they had a connection with the family. But historically, over the last 4 decades, it was a professor at Humboldt State, a soils professor. So he used that kind of as a laboratory for his students, and some of the trees, the fruit trees, were planted by his students. So so that now it's owned by this local fellow and his wife.
Because he had known this family for years and begged them to let him buy it. And they said, no. Well, finally, they said yes.
They bought it, and they had a plan to subdivide it and put housing in it, but that didn't go through. And his wife has a genetic marker for mold toxicity, which some unfortunate people in this area have. So they're moving to Bend, Oregon. Yeah, so they're in the process of moving.
They live in they live on
North Bank Road.
North Bank Road. They were going to build a home there, but because of the wife's illness, they decided.
So you think of this, then it's a $750,000 piece of property that is the first weekend. It's zoned agricultural, and it would take a lot of agriculture to pay off a $750,000 purchase. So it's not going to go real quick as is. They've already tried to subdivide and build on it, but that didn't go through.
Well, the reason it didn't go through was not because it was turned down. Mandy, the city manager of Blue Lake, wanted to do that, and she got ousted. Fired or let go, or she quit. No one, I don't really know. But so the plan died, and that's what happened. It never got turned down. He has an environmental report. He has a wetlands report. He has a sewage report. That's all it's been. And he got the records of that before it. And I didn't understand what happened. I went all over it. But I don't hate stuff. But
if you eliminate developers from the buying pool of that land, there aren't a lot of other buyers who are in outlay for agricultural land. So I'm thinking if you let it sit for a couple of months, it might, one, come down in price or change somehow. So, but that's this specific piece of land, so it doesn't matter, like
But
I say.
there's also developers who haven't given it a try, who might.
If they go for it,
You know.
you're up against developers. It's not something we want to compete against.
Not able to. But
right.
seems like
So-
Danco's pretty voracious. And
Well, they'd have a lot to do there because they'd, again, be facing the same issues we're facing. They would have more money to do that. They would have to figure that out. And also, this guy loved the tiny home village. He really loved that concept. He loved, like, part of this too is like, okay, there's all of us that are getting a little older. Can we also have some of this be a fundraiser for us? You know, so could we have some affordable rentals, and I mean affordable, and could we get that rental income to help ourselves individually? Is that possible? Could we do workshops there and earn money from that? Could we rent out, have the communal home be gorgeous and rent it out for weddings? Interface with the Blue Lake community at large and have people from popcorn night and charge, you know, by donation. Can we do yoga and meditation retreats there? If we did multi-use zoning, we could also have like meditation or yoga retreats there and have people camp out on the land if the community was okay with that, and charge whatever amount people, you know, so that's all part of it too. Could we put a grocery store on there if we had goats and we wanted to do goat? Sure. Could we maybe even, there's 2 buildings that are on the driveway in that are owned by the city and they haven't been used for decades. Might they allow us to lease those or build onto them, or even give us that land in return for us promising to have a coffee shop for the local community that's staffed by volunteers from the community at large? Could we do a grocery store there, or a convenience store that sells things? Really, the sky's the limit. So those are all things that could be possible. It's right across from the brewery in Blue Lake. The opportunity zone is right there. So it's right. I'm going to say it's pregnant with possibility. There's so much that could happen.
And that was the idea of a business plan. Putting together a business plan.
I already did. Me and AI. We put together a 10-page business plan and we put that puppy in the mayor's hands of Blue Lake. But it's stalled there. So we thought maybe we'll go talk to the new city manager. That was our business plan, just trying to like make a grab for something well before this came up. This was about another prospect. But that's something, yeah, so we could have groups of us. People, if some people are interested in the permitting or have expertise there, we have a couple people that check into the permitting and have meetings. Other people do business plan weeks. Others do fundraising and figure out if they want to be nonprofit. That would all be part of the equation at some
Thank
point.
you so
That would be
much.
helpful to kind of work groups.
No problem.
Yes.
Well, to me it sounds exciting. Possibilities.
Well, then one of the challenges up front was always what unites, brings people together to live in a community, planned community like this. And, one of the most successful planned communities in the United States is one built around transcendental meditation. Because they have that one thing that they all do, TM. Before a meeting, they would all meditate on problems, etc. So, if you're bringing people together, what unites them? What makes them want to live 20 feet away from each other and share a common house and common building and, you know, all the things you share and work together in the garden, etc. So I like the idea that a Sufi philosophy can be used as a general kind of way to bring people together. But I'm not sure what that is.
Love, harmony, and beauty.
Well, okay, that's fine. That's all it is.
What, how can you
What could I
disagree
ask
with
for?
that? You know? I mean, joy,
Dancing.
dancing.
It can be centered around a temple, kind of a small religious sort of thing. You know, all of us come from different traditions of yoga or I lived at Hidden Valley Ashram in Escondido, and I got to see what a real looks like there.
What's their center? I've never heard of it.
So that's from Self-Realization
Oh,
Fellowship.
that place. Yeah. Yeah.
You been to Hidden Valley?
I think so.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Because I knew somebody who
In
lived.
Escondido?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
To help pay for it, retreat. Kind of under the table volunteers who residents there. That's what I did. So yeah, but that's the centering of it being like we all came together, meditated in the chapel every day, every night. Maybe centered around the temple or something like that, as far as intentional goes.
Well, I visited an old friend who lives in a kind of upscale place in, was that Napa, Healdsburg, something, but it's sponsored by the Zen Center in San Francisco. I should remember the name of it. Anyway, they have a Zendo, and they have that orientation, but not, my friend who lives there is Jewish and is not into Zen. So it's there, but it's not like a daily thing that people do, which is more my perspective of, which I appreciate about the Sufis, is that they respect and honor all traditions and don't have dogma. So I think having as I mentioned before, having a meditation yoga space that is open to everybody, and maybe eventually you'd have a sit at a certain time, but that's just there. I prefer the sort of looser community of thought. But I think if we have I imagine that most of us have a certain progressive point of view in terms of vis-a-vis sort of what's happening in America now, so that we appreciate that we are people who take care of the most vulnerable in society and appreciate that and that sort of thing.
I also lived at Harbin Hot Springs back before it burned down.
Harbin, yes.
So I got to see the intentional community designed around kind of spiritual cohesion, but it actually wasn't. It was more disjointed. Because of that, people were off doing their own thing and having their own workshops and having this and that. There wasn't much of a centralizing force other than everybody was working there at the hot springs. And there was a lot of political drama and hierarchy and stuff like that. So we really have to look out for the political, terrorism that could happen in a place like that. Whereas at the ashram, even though it was more rigid and strict, it was very focused on sharing activities that brought people together. We were working together. There were schedules where people were working in the kitchens. People, someone would do guard duty at night, and then that rotated with everybody, and it was all cool. So we had kind of rotating activities that everybody participated in, not all the time, but we also had scheduled jobs. Whereas at the hot springs, it was much more like, this is your job, you're an employee, this is what you do, and then the rest of it is whatever you want to do with your life. So there wasn't as much intention.
Yeah, I think this for me also what you're bringing up, Corey, is a really, really important point. After living in 5 different, Arkasanti, which is a huge intentional community, and Oroville in India, and my home, which is a micro community. But I've noticed over the years when I have roommates and we're meditating together regularly, we're just like, this is the time we're doing it, we're sitting now, and ding ding, there's no teaching or story or anything like that. It's just spending time together in presence, which is what I take you're talking about. And it makes a huge difference when, you know, and I know this one guy who lived at Findhorn, so Findhorn, Oregon, and Arcasanti were all kind of built around the same time. I didn't live at Findhorn, and I've never been there, but you know, it's actually the most successful of the three of them in terms of intentional community. And you know, one thing they do is they come together every day and they'll hold hands in a big circle and like that. It just, if there's not like Harbin, you know, if there's not that coherence of coming together in a field of coherence, you know, and a lot of us do that in micro ways in our community, but that really is a huge thing. And I don't know, you know, I just take this a little further. I'm visiting here. I love this idea. And I'm not sure how long I will be for this process, but I'm totally here now as a lover of communal living, and we'll see where it goes. Yeah. But this property that these guys are talking about years ago when I was living in Blue Lake, and then out in Blue Lake with a bunch of other people, but you know, living out in Blue Lake, this me and a few friends used to go around that property and go, oh my God, this would be cool. Think about this. What could this be? I mean, it's like a stone's throw from the Logger Bar. I mean, it is right down.
You can walk everywhere.
It is right there.
And it is so precious to find a place that's not too far from Arcata, from a hospital, if God willing our hospital continues, you know, to be there. You know, because I don't know about you, I may be the eldest here, but I'm 75 this year, and you never know. You know, having access to not too far away is kind of helpful. You know.
Well, I appreciate what you say, Therese, about having some practices together. I'm glad that you brought that up. What is it that holds people together? It's good to have, I think, some of these things in place, because inevitably there are conflicts and practical things all the time. But it's so great to have some rituals in place where people are already feeling connections which are bigger than their reptilian brains. And,
I kind of picture like the Unitarian Fellowship. That's kind of the
main
my
hall.
image.
Yeah.
Is that there's a temple, but it's also meeting space. It's got, you can cater there. I've catered weddings there, but there's the dances and Sufis,
Yeah.
Jewish
I mean,
tradition. Everything comes
it'd
together.
be wonderful to have dances,
People can sign up to
you
do
know,
workshops
together.
or kirtans or yoga, like everything you said. A nice central space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally into the concept.
You know, as for me, like when I think of spiritual, you know, I think of, I do think of people practicing together, but I realize that we all have our different things that we're really gravitating towards. And I wouldn't, like for me, I wouldn't want to say everyone has to meditate or everyone has to do yoga. Like I'm into those things, but I don't want to necessarily, you know, like that wouldn't feel good to me to be like, yeah, if you live here, you have like, it's not, it can be ashram-esque, and in my head it kind of is in that way, where we do all sign up for, like if we had 30 people there, do you know how boring it would be to have one night a week to cook? I mean, one night a month, like 30 people, you cook, you know, that night, one time in the whole month. That's it.
And that's
Otherwise,
what we did.
you
Yeah,
just
that's
get
what we
to
did in
show
Berkeley.
up.
Yeah.
You know, and that's
it
what
was
they
great.
talk about again and again in here is like, you know, if you have things that that's also your practice. So like having once a month cooking or if there are children there, having people that rotate childcare. If there are elders there, having people that rotate elder care. If there's a garden there, having people that rotate in and out, so that everyone kind of, yeah, you get to do what you want, but you have to rotate through all of it. No, I'm just gardening. I am not like doing anything else ever. But it's like, no, we all rotate, and even like maybe you have somebody that does marketing or business, or that rotates too, so that one person doesn't like have to be doing that the whole time. They champion and lead you, and then you take it and grow with it. And I think part of it too for me is that like a spiritual practice is going, I kind of don't know about that idea, but let's try it and see.
Yeah.
Let's put our energy into that. Let's believe it can work, and let's see what happens. And if it doesn't, then we come back to the spiritual. Like for me, that's a spiritual. So I suppose, like for me, what does it mean to be part of a spiritual community? Is like, what does it mean to be spiritual? Like just right now, we took a moment to like bless the food. That was spiritual. We took a moment to like check in with each other before the meeting and just go into our hearts and figure out what we wanted before we started. That was spiritual.
And I like the idea of absolutely not having it as an absolute, because, but it becomes more like an oasis, where people are like, oh, I want to be part of that. The fragrance is so beautiful. The fragrance is beautiful. Yeah.
And like, I can't do this tonight. Can you do it? And I'll switch with you. That's all part of this, the practice.
Well, and also, really, really working out those difficulties, transparent communication, authenticity. I mean, there's decades of practice even right here at this table for that stuff. So, important, difficult conversations are very important.
We can all gain from each other. Everybody has.
And we've all probably had different communal experiences. I mean, I've had a number two. Places.
What does that mean to you, spiritual practices or spiritual community?
Pretty loosely defined. For me, I'm not a practicing beliefs. Unfortunately, I was raised Catholic, so I was polluted from an early age.
You're forgiven for being Catholic.
Bless me,
Go
Father.
forth. Whatever you need to do.
I have that same path.
But I have no problem. I live with Suzanne, who's as spiritual a person as you'll ever meet, and is dedicated to it in many, many ways. And I appreciate that commitment that she's made, and that path, because there's a lot of comfort in it, and there's a lot of happiness. I just never have been exposed to it much. So therefore, I think a village to me would be the best of both. You maximize the privacy and you maximize the community. You have the opportunity either within your own house or maybe further out in the land someplace or in the workshop to be in a private space. But you get all the best of the community as well. Yes, you're sharing things so that one of the goals would be to reduce the cost of living as much as possible, because we haven't talked about it, but what's the world going to be like in 5 years, 10 years? That's an important part of this decision for me. That we may be looking at this as being the paradigm of how people are going to live 10, 15 years from now. This is the only way to afford it. The only way to be able to afford utilities.
Thank you.
Yes, pioneer that and maybe even create a paradigm. And we can go to philanthropists and foundations and say, look, we're we're testing the system, we're learning as we go. We'll report back to you on what works and what doesn't work. We're going to hire somebody, or one of us is going to YouTube the whole damn thing from the start to the finish, which, by the way, would be another source of income. And this is to deal with the biggest problem in the country, that there's just not enough housing. And living in an apartment or living in a condo is, you're taking a lot of hits on the quality of life. Here we're telling people that this is it. You have the best of community, you have the best of privacy. And so that's what I would like from a spiritual community is the exposure to it would be great, but I still need that sense that this is my life and I'm not part of a mandatory community situation.
I like what you say about the best of the private life and the communal life, and also that there's an outreach to the greater community, this community of service to people beyond 5 acres or whatever. That it isn't just a sanctuary for the people who get to belong, but there's interface with the immediate Blue Lake community, but also with the greater world. That we're part of the world. We're hopefully showing the way for exploring the way, sharing the way, that we're connected and we're not like a lifeboat isolated from the rest of the society.
Well, since the ordinance is so new in Humboldt County, it seems like, it would be kind of pioneers for Humboldt County to, show people what's possible.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, it's about having community really being able to share a lot of stuff, not just physically, but I'm an artist among other things, and I've always tried to have my studio available for friends, and had at times many gatherings, but I've always wanted it to be more open than that, and I'm totally open to sharing, lots of things, like books, and I'm a cinemaphile, and I have a huge collection of cinema, I have art supplies, I have, all of these things. I'd love to, I am of a Jewish background, though I have many feet in many spiritual paths, and so to share Shabbos is a wonderful thing, that sort of thing. So, and to have the mutual support. But frankly, I've been living now for years in kind of a nice tin box next door at Lazy J, and I don't want to, I'd rather have more than 20 feet, thank you, between me and my neighbor, I'm
Is that what you have right now?
Yeah.
probably less, I think less in my place, yeah, so, yeah. So I don't want to trade one compressed situation for, quite another in that way, though this would have many advantages.
Will there be any kind of vetting of who joins the community? Not to be a gatekeeper, but we had 2 kids for many years as neighbors who always fought, and it was really loud all the time. And and I was a kindergarten teacher for years on end. I loved kids, but that was too much. So that's a deal breaker for me. And it's hard to say that I'd want to be a gatekeeper, but
Yeah.
Goes with that. I mean, there's a process.
Love, harmony, and beauty.
yes.
Would you mind if we went around the table to just, that was one of the things I was really curious about tonight, to hear what people's deal breakers were. Could we start that as a jumping off spot, or do people want to continue with the other?
Sure.
I have to hear Pamela's spiritual
My spiritual.
your commentary.
Do you have more to say?
I have one more, and so I think somebody said it earlier that nothing would be mandatory. I mean, of course, effort into the community and volunteering your time, absolutely, but nothing should be mandatory. Other than maybe cleanliness, but
Yeah, I think so. For my personal or my spiritual practice, I think is centered around nature. I feel most connected with nature, and also I think I'm really close to Buddhism. I do meditate, and I think really though my spiritual practice is about dwelling in presence as much as possible, and so I make that's my practice. The majority of the time when I catch myself not being there. And I'm also very much committed to my own personal growth and transformation, and communication is really important to me. So that would be huge in being able to have conversations with people that might be difficult, just to keep the energies clear amongst us. I wasn't raised with a religion. I was raised, after my mom got sober, I was raised with karma. And so I feel most centered in that.
Raised with what?
Karma.
Uh-huh.
My mom was sober one week, and a book of karma fell off the bookshelf in the bookstore and hit her.
No way.
Yeah, and hit her. And so she started reading and teaching, and that was when I was 11. So, yeah, that's. And I also do have a strong through nature to something greater, because this world is so beautiful. I just feel like there's some, creative force that's beyond conception for me. And I do trust Cindy, like Rua, like you mentioned earlier about, knowing that if like a property is meant for this to happen, then it will manifest.
Deal breakers?
I think having lived in the different communities I have, one of the biggest sicknesses I think our culture has is egotism. So really having that checked at the door before entering a community, and that being a real part of the vetting process, is how egotistical are people. Everything has to be their way. How inflexible, how flexible are people psychologically. And also, I saw a lot of drug abuse at Harbin. I saw a lot of drama and egotism even at the ashram, which was a more organized religious organization. So that's a deal breaker for me, I think, is excessive, dramatic egotism. There are bits like communal activities, I think they're necessary in this situation for people to share the work, share responsibilities. I'm not saying anything should be mandatory or required or rigid, but with the intention being more that we're doing things together to expand our consciousness, to increase our joy, to be around one another, because the other things that I think our culture has is excessive isolation and separation from one another, which has been designed in the way buildings are designed, the way our minds are trained, by our culture, by our parents, by media. So to really start breaking away from the mold of egotism and isolation, which Mother Teresa said was the biggest poverty she saw in the world, was in the U.S. because of that. So I think those are important points for me that could make me not want to be in a situation like that, or it could make me want to if people can check it and really have some self-control and self-awareness.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, for me, just in our, in our communal times together, this, just a real willingness to surrender, willingness to, and having, you know, Pam and I did this thing, what was that, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, put on by the Human Rights Commission, and it was Talk Matters, and, you know, bridging difficult conversations, and really, I mean, I think this goes in line with, you know, a lot of the other shares, are to really have processes where we're really held by the community to be really accountable, you know, for ourselves, and a willingness to, you know, to be in challenging conversations. Yeah, that's important to me. And to, you know, to just be playful. I mean, you know, to really enjoy. I mean, these are not deal breakers. It's like deal breaker. I mean, gosh, it's interesting when I presence that, you know. I presence that it would be very important for me to live in a community where there was like a cleansing practice, different cleansing practices, and accountability. Yeah, those are really important.
Is there anything that you feel like if this were going on, I really wouldn't want to be part of that? Or not?
Well, you know, gosh, after living in so many different communal situations over the years, is really spending pretty much my whole life being from a big family. Those are never deal breakers. But I think putting into the foundation, you know, these practices are we're going to hold each other to, you know, be accountable for, just be, you know, aligning with beauty and harmony and opening. You know, I think about the fixation to surrender. I don't really need to talk anymore, but these are, I don't think it would make me leave. I think it's more a matter of what's being built into the foundation of it.
Maybe a group photo.
Yeah. Group photo.
Break it up a little bit.
Document this.
Well, we should all go over here so that we have that sign behind it.
Yeah, let's do that.
The color is beautiful, yeah.
Get up and stretch for
Yes.
a moment.
All right.
Okay. Whoops. I don't want to hit your finger.
All right, bring it. Got everybody? You can turn it sideways.
There you go. You want to turn sideways?
Oh, sorry.
Yo no tengo skin. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Fiesta time.
Fiesta time. Dios, gracias por todo.
Nada.
Thank you.
That's a good photo. Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know.
Thank you.
Well, I like what you say, Therese, and earlier you said, you know, about not living on the land. People would, I mean, I would envision that people could feel connected whether they actually physically live there or not, that you know, connected and hopefully held, you know, in a caring regard by the greater community that, you know, that we're here together. Yeah.
You know, and sometimes I think about situations like this. Like here we all are, you know, doing this. And whatever comes of this is perfect. You know, we're seeding this. And if it goes all the way through, wow, amazing. But this sense of continuing to give it up beyond ourselves in order to bring in a greater possibility of it happening. whether it's us or, you know, and I'm not saying it's not going to be, but this idea of letting go of just gotta, I'm not, and we're not even going there, but I know these tendencies can happen in groups, but just this idea of, like, this is happening, this is seeding something, and it's beautiful. Yeah. And Rua, you know, your vision so far is amazing. It's very compelling, and I love the clarity of where you're coming from and how many years you've been dreaming this, 20 years, and you know.
And other the people I know, I want to honor and recognize. I know Walt's had this vision for decades as well, and you know, maybe looked a little different, but you know, but
And when we first moved to Arcata, we had just lived in it. That's where we met as an intentional community. And we were like, why are people all in their own houses? Like, this is crazy. We all need to be hanging out, you know? And so, yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
I had a couple deal breakers for me. Is excessive use of alcohol or drugs. Like, I'm fine with partying, but not just like really like drugs. I grew up with alcoholism, and I just, it's not a good energy for
Just
me.
a little bit of PCP.
A little bit of PCP is fine. Heroin,
Just a micro
microdose of heroin. No, actually, I'm fine with
Coquito.
a lot of things, but
I just came from a recovery center.
Yeah, and then another deal breaker would be lack of transparency around decision making, finances, etc. I really, you know, I've lived in communities where I was a renter, and I want to have decision making capabilities, like some sort of consensus model or some way of making decision where I feel like every voice is heard. That's important to me.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be just like, okay, we own this land and we're going to make all the decisions.
Yeah.
That's, I can rent. And in fact, I am renting. Thank you. Yeah.
Those were good. Thank you for being so clear with those. Those are also deal breakers for me. Can I just
Ditto from Therese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
Yeah, those were
Linda?
I'm feeling particularly inarticulate at the moment.
Come back the second time around, and that's fine.
Yeah. But I'm very glad and I need some nature, you know. I don't want to live on another
oh yeah, the 20-foot
lot.
space, right?
Yeah,
You
I
need
don't
more
know.
than
I don't know if
20
it's
foot
exactly
space.
20 foot, but you know, it's trees and garden and yeah, and just lower key. It's wonderful if there's like you say, you can walk to places, and that's lovely. And the river's not far at this place either.
Yeah.
So it'd be wonderful.
I just would echo what everybody else has said here to begin with. But one of the requirements might be to practice and learn practices of interpersonal communication in all of its different forms. It would be something that you might actually put right in the mission statement or whatever it is, that's saying we are dedicated to learning how to communicate effectively, and we'll study it, and we'll attend classes or whatever needs to be so that you know how to deal with problems that pop up in a very positive way.
That's great.
Interpersonal communication is essential. So that's one. But then two, there may be a way to structure this village to where people are given a chance to participate at a slightly less level. I'm not being articulate either, but think of it as you mentioned some apartments that might be, or some that are rentals. So you'd like to join our village, that's great. We almost always take kindergarten teachers because we really like them. So
Everyone needs
a
a kindergarten
But-
teacher.
But we'd ask you to join at this level to begin with, so that we're not asking you just to jump in and become part of this community right off the bat. You can rent for 6 months and see how it's like, and we can see how you're like, so that you have an opportunity to make the decision over a period of time and really test out compatibilities. I think that would be helpful to be able, so it's not all at one time. As far as deal breakers go, it's all the same. We've been around drugs. We've been around egotistical people. We've married some of them, in fact.
We've been some of it.
We've been some. And so just not going back down that road to, and right off the bat saying, we are a peaceful community. We really are. And this is about people getting along. Because we are that paradigm. We are pioneers in community living, and we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to learn from them, and that's our goal. Is you may not even end up being this is your final place to live, but while you're there, you're helping build a legacy and learning. And so those two things, that interpersonal communication is paramount, and some way of scaffolding a person in rather than just dropping them immediately into the mix.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Corey and I have between us many, many years of being professional caregivers. So part of that is a consciousness about people who may have challenges physically and otherwise, and that be part of the thought that we're there to support each other in ways, and especially as we age, sometimes people can live independently with support, with certain kinds of support, and I think that's an important thing to be aware of and committed to.
Yeah, you would build your community kitchen would be built low enough so people in wheelchairs could participate in cooking and such.
There's one thing we haven't talked about are animals.
Yeah.
I think
Animals,
that
yes.
depending on the animals, that could be a serious deal breaker.
That's
For
true.
Rama and me both, we don't have pets. We've never had pets for allergenic reasons, but also we like a lot of stillness and quiet. So that could be I'm sure a lot of people love their animals and would want them to be on a property like this. So it's just something to have on the rack there.
Quiet animals.
Well
We're
behaved,
definitely not
well-behaved,
anti-animals.
that mostly hang out at people's
we love them
spaces,
actually.
in people's private spaces.
Yeah, we have like neighborhood cats that we love. We don't let them in our house, but they come up.
And we'll love them. We love them up.
But we've got a French bulldog trainer a couple houses down who has like 12 French bulldogs running around in a big gaggle together, and they're adorable, and their barks aren't too loud, so they're like but it's like if there's like heavy loud barking every morning, and if uncontrolled animals can be a real problem.
Yeah, and barky dogs.
Sure, if you have 15, 20 domiciles and each one of them has 2 dogs, yeah.
I went out of here. What did I sign up for?
So
I was surprised to read in the tiny home villages there is actually legislation that each tiny home can only have a maximum of 2 animals, and that includes fish, birds, lizards, dogs, cats, whatever. That's the
Mammals.
tiny home mandate.
Mammals.
Huh.
Yeah, I didn't. I was like, wow.
Yeah,
fish
fish
farming.
doesn't seem right.
She's got
Yeah.
three. I knew she
Obnoxious
had-
fish.
Of course.
I mean, that seems very surprising in a world where so many people have, service dogs.
Oh,
Well, I don't know
yeah.
how much any of this is enforced, but
Yeah.
that's, I was like, wow. Okay.
And service dogs are well behaved.
Yeah, this is very
And
true.
they usually
True service dogs, yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
true service dog.
they usually don't have to abide by all the same policies.
Oh, that's true.
Like even
that's
on
true.
campus, they're allowed
Yeah.
in all spaces.
Yeah, that's true. They get a pass. God, in Canada during COVID, some woman she had her husband on a leash because you could only be out walking if you were walking your pet. So she and her husband got together.
I've been there.
Creative. Oh my goodness. He's my pet.
All right, maybe
That's what I
just
call 'em.
Pete and me,
Okay.
and
Yep.
then I don't want to keep folks too long on a first meeting. I would just
Sounds great.
So maybe just do that, and then we'll figure out
Pay the bill.
pay the bill and figure out what people want to talk about next time or when the meeting is. Maybe to finish up on deal breakers.
Well, so resonating with just about everything. For me, I'm fed by nature, so I'm more drawn to nature than a big old huge community. But at the same time, I know there's so much potential in mixing in a community that has some intention and some practices, some harmony together. So for me, it would be nature and quiet. Get one by a highway, thing, or barking, a lot of barking dogs.
Or
I'm-
roosters.
Roosters.
I like chickens, but no roosters.
Yeah, and and it is, it's a huge step forward then to be making decisions with the group and the communication skills that, as handicapped as they are to this point, but opening up to better communication with more people than just the live-in partner, whatever people are used to. So communicating within a group in a productive, respectful, constructive way. And of course, there'd be a process of people coming in and becoming more long-term members, so you wouldn't just say, okay, you're in or you're out.
No.
But yeah, it would have, there's like an organic process where people would say, well, this isn't really quite what I thought it was or what I was looking for. They would move on or however.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
But it's by attraction. If there's something here that that's appealing, then the right people would come and add to the potential of what we are as humans. Let's get some more money out there.
For my deal breakers that I really second, like I'm on the same page. It's very interesting just to hear, what people feel like they want. We got into some of the ones, a lot of the absolutely not. And they're pretty much the same for me. The one thing that wasn't said, however, is I couldn't live in a place that killed animals or processed meat. That would be my absolute one of the things I'm out of here.
I didn't.
A place that kills animals or processes meat. So if people were wanting to raise cows to butcher and they wanted to process them there, I couldn't do it.
Because I know that for animal husbandry, Genevieve, you have to get rid of some of those sheep every year. Like it's just a part of it.
Right.
So that
Wouldn't work.
right.
No.
Chickens.
Yeah, eggs. Eggs are fine for me.
But then
Killing the chickens, I wouldn't want to do that. No. So that is a deal breaker for me, and I just want to put that on the table in case there are people that you really want that.
Did you see this?
Well, where's the, yeah, it's coming around.
selling the cheese. Or like, I'm not against anything like that. Just like the actual killing of animals or raising them to kill.
Sure.
I put it in
So I'm going to turn off the recording now. Thanks for everyone, unless there's anything anyone else wants to say.
Sufi
Let's
stuff.
just start.
Yeah.
Okay.
What,
When you're in
122.
Oroville, I was in
Okay.
Oroville
We're turning off the recording?